Around a decade ago, something occurred that I've never been able to shake off. Even now, it lingers in my thoughts like a shadow refusing to fade. At the time, I was in my late 20s, seeking escape in a secluded stretch of wilderness far removed from civilization, deep within the uncharted forests of eastern Alaska. I wasn't a novice in outdoor survival, but I wouldn't have called myself an expert either. I had plenty of experience navigating rugged terrain and handling the unpredictability of nature. That region wasn't for the faint-hearted. It was home to formidable predators, grizzlies that moved like ghosts through the trees and wolves that watched from unseen vantage points. Few people dared venture into such territory, and those who did often traveled in groups for safety. A handful of adventurers passed through its trails every year, but for the most part, the land remained eerily silent, untouched by human presence. I had always been drawn to places that felt forgotten by time. For this particular trip, I chose an obscure path cutting through dense forest, leading toward a vast, windswept plateau that overlooked endless miles of jagged peaks. Another trail veered off a few miles west, descending into a valley that hid a narrow, twisting river. Though I was tempted to explore it, I sensed it might attract more visitors, so I decided against it. My intuition proved correct. During my entire hike, I encountered no one. The land felt abandoned, and when I finally reached my intended campsite, it was as if I had stepped into a world entirely my own. Setting up camp, I worked quickly, pitching my tent on the outer edge where the terrain sloped downward and arranging stones into a fire pit. With only a few hours of daylight left, I planned to do nothing more than sit quietly, letting the stillness of the wilderness seep into my bones. Yet even in that solitude, there was a strange energy in the air, something I couldn't quite name. I remained near the fire, letting its warmth push back the creeping chill of the night air, staring into the vast unknown above me. The wilderness stretched in every direction, endless and undisturbed. A steady breeze threaded through the valley, carrying faint echoes of distant wildlife. Owls whispering through the trees, insects humming in rhythm with the night. The solitude was nearly perfect, until it wasn't. The first disturbance was subtle, just the crunch of leaves beneath deliberate footsteps. Not the rhythmic pattern of an animal, but something heavier, a person. The realization sent a ripple of unease through me. My breath stilled as I instinctively fixed my gaze on the darkness beyond my campfire. And at the edge of my campsite, I saw him. The flickering flames warped his features, casting unpredictable shadows. I could tell he carried a backpack suited for travel, but beyond that, the details eluded me. He stood there silently, assessing the space, his gaze drifting over my tent, the fire, the supplies. My throat tightened as I prepared to speak, but before I could, he whispered, "Sorry," so softly it was barely audible. Then without another word, he turned back the way he'd come, retracing his steps into the thick of the woods. That single word echoed strangely in my mind. Why was he sorry? He had to be looking for a campsite. Nobody wandered these woods in the dead of night without a purpose, and yet something about him felt off. Not threatening exactly, but unsettling. His movements were too precise, his appearance too sudden. I tried to shake the feeling, forcing myself back into the moment. The stars blinked down at me, and eventually I let the silence settle once more. He was just another traveler, I told myself. Nothing unusual, probably just lost. Hours passed. The sky darkened as thick clouds rolled in, smothering the moonlight and casting an oppressive weight over the trees. I stayed by the fire, reluctant to close my eyes, hoping the exhaustion would eventually overtake me. Then, footsteps again. Not careful this time, faster, urgent. The sound snapped me upright, my pulse kicking into high gear. This wasn't the slow, steady approach from before. Whoever was moving through the woods now was panicked, their pace erratic. The noise grew louder until, breaking into my clearing, the same man stumbled forward, visibly shaken. His backpack sagged on his shoulders, his clothes were marked with dirt and wear, and his face was different, disheveled, wide-eyed, scared. But his mouth remained stiff, unmoving, unreadable. "Is everything okay?" I forced the words out, though my voice was measured. You should have reached your campsite by now. It's late." His breath came fast, but his posture was rigid. His gaze flickered behind me, watching something over my shoulder before locking back onto me. For the first time since his arrival, he spoke, his voice barely above the wind. "Are you lost?" His tone was flat, almost mechanical. "Maybe I can help." Something was wrong, not just with him, with whatever had caused him to return. The forest held its breath, and in that moment I realized I wasn't alone out here. Not really. He muttered something under his breath, just a barely audible "no," as if rejecting whatever thought had crept into his mind. Then slowly, as if measuring each word, he spoke again. "I was just hiking. Didn't mean to bother you." His voice was distant, distracted, and the whole time his eyes kept shifting, always towards something on my right. Just a flicker of movement, then back to me. The rhythm of it unnerved me. I hesitated before offering, "You look nervous. If you need help, I can send a radio message or whatever you need." He didn't acknowledge my words. Instead, his gaze sharpened, locking onto me with unsettling intensity. "You're camping here? Right now?" The way he asked it sent a chill through me. The words weren't casual. There was weight behind them. Cautiously, I followed his glance, turning slightly over my shoulder. Nothing. Just empty woods swallowed in darkness. A deep unease settled in my chest. This conversation was veering into something I didn't want to be a part of. Then he asked something far worse. "Is it just you here?" His voice was low, edged with something unreadable. "Are you alone?" Something in my gut twisted. "Where are the others?" I hesitated. The way he stood, the tension radiating from him, it felt like I was standing in a moment that could tip either way. And before I could decide how to answer, he spoke again. "Have you been following me?" Everything in him was shifting. His stance, his breathing. It was like watching someone unravel in real time. I shook my head. "Number, I don't know what you're talking about." His eyes flickered back toward the trees. But this time, they didn't return to me. They stayed fixed on something behind me, wide and hollow. And then, almost whispering, he asked one last question. "Then why are you with her?" Something inside me snapped. I whipped my head around, bracing for the worst. Nothing. Just dark, empty trees stretching endlessly in every direction. I turned back to the man, only he wasn't there anymore. His face had twisted into something raw, something purely terrified, and before I could process it, he bolted. Sprinting into the woods with no hesitation, his form swallowed instantly by the night. And the direction he ran wasn't toward the trail, wasn't toward safety, wasn't toward anywhere logical at all. My pulse pounded in my ears. I scanned the space around me, desperate to understand what had just happened. What had he seen? What had I missed? And then, the words returned, echoing like a whisper between the trees. "Then why are you with her?" I gathered everything I had, stuffing gear into my bag with frantic urgency. I wasn't staying. Even as I made my way back, every sound set my nerves on edge. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig. I kept expecting something, someone, to appear. I was being followed. I could feel it. But I never saw her. I never saw anyone. Yet somehow, as I made my way toward the edge of the woods, the lingering sense of a presence refused to fade. As if whatever was out there, whatever he saw, had simply chosen not to be seen. I made it to my car, my hands shaking as I gripped the wheel, and drove away without looking back. The creeping unease didn't fade with distance. It lingered, settling in the back of my mind like an unresolved whisper. The next morning, after restless hours turning over the events in my head, I decided to report what had happened. I wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do, but something in me insisted that I try. I left a note with the nearest police station, detailing the encounter. Not as an accusation, but as a plea for someone to check on that man. Because the more I thought about it, the more concerned I became. Over the years, I've consulted dozens of people, shared my story in hopes of making sense of what I witnessed. The most reasonable, albeit tragic theory, is that the man had been lost for days, maybe longer, Hunger and dehydration could have pushed him past the edge of rational thought, causing him to spiral into paranoia, convinced that someone was following him through the woods. If this was true, then his fear wasn't based in reality, but in delirium. And in that fragile state, he had mistaken me for just another threat rather than the help he desperately needed. He had been too deep in his own terror to realize that I could have given him food, water, and let him out. But here's the thing, I don't know if that theory is right, because there's another possibility. What if he really was being followed? What if he didn't run from imaginary fears, but from something very real? What if, when he looked at me, he wasn't debating whether I was friend or foe, but whether I was one of them? If that was the case, then his reaction wasn't just paranoia, it was a warning. And if that's true, then his panic saved my life. Unfortunately, we'll never know for sure. No one ever found him. No one ever spotted him again. It was as if, just like the presence he feared, he had faded into the woods, swallowed by something unseen. And that, perhaps, is the most unsettling thought of all.